This week, we're going to talk about character. Chapter 2 in our textbook, Writing Fiction, discusses the importance of developing a character. A lot of books start with plot, and of course you've got to have a plot or you don't have a story. But more important than the plot, if you want to craft something really meaningful, is character. Character, in my mind, is the most important part of crafting a good story. One that, as the book says, casts shadows, a thing that you want to do. So this week we're going to work at the beginnings of crafting a character that does cast shadows. It's not just a type character, a heroine, a villain, a repair person, whatever the basic element of that character is. We want to move beyond it and begin to develop something, a person or a mythical creature that has dimension to it, something that we can befriend, take into our hearts, and something that our readers will also take into their hearts. And that's a real tricky thing to do. It's not easy, and it takes time to do it. That's part of the reason why some books are years in the making instead of weeks or months, because getting into the world and the depth of the character is something that is really a challenge to do. To get us started, I'm going to take you through a process that I use, talk just a little bit about the book, the reading assignment, the New Yorker podcast story for this week, and get us thinking more about the big project that we're going to have due around midterm. All right, so first of all, in developing a character, the book says that your character has to desire something. And the first thing you've got to do is to decide what it is that your character wants. And it could be really dramatic. It could be a huge big deal, vindication, retribution, love, whatever. Or it could be something fairly small. I want to move, this character really desperately wants to move from one place to the next place. But it's all a journey in terms of how desire propels that character to the next step. And if you can't articulate what the character really, 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 really wants, then your story is probably going to be pretty flat on the page and isn't going to inspire your characters to love, or your readers to love your character. All right? So the first thing I've done is I use this character analysis worksheet, and I posted a blank one as well as a copy of my first draft. A good character will go through many, many, many drafts of these things so that you get to know them. But I posted this for you to begin to use to think about the character that you will make, the composite of people that you have known, the one that you want to be the central person in your story. All right, that would be your protagonist. You could also, and probably should, do a similar strategy for your antagonist, the one who's standing in the way of the desire. All right. This character analysis sheet that I've posted is someone who is my antagonist. I'm working on a creative nonfiction piece, basically trying to explore a really complex situation that I've been in for a couple of years with someone I like a lot and someone I also dislike a lot. So there's another tension in character, right? It's very complex. And it can't be simple. A character cannot be all good. A character cannot be all bad and be human. So we have to move beyond those stick figures. And this situation has created a real opening for me to investigate that. But first of all, I have to get into the dimensions and the outlines of who this woman is. Creative nonfiction, and I am perfectly willing for you to do a creative nonfiction for your fiction project if you choose to. It is true, and it has to be true to the best of your knowledge, right? You use the elements of fiction to tell a story, but you have to remain true to the piece. If you're not going to be absolutely true to the piece, if you're not willing to deal with the fallout of the story that you're telling, you need to fictionalize it and change some of the details and the person's name and those kinds of things so that you don't get slandered, you don't commit slander, and you are not masking the obvious inside fiction. So for this one, I have not used my person's real name. I have given her a different name, but like the book says, you want your name to say a lot about who your character is. The woman I'm talking about is an Italian Catholic, raised Italian Catholic. In my story, so far I'm making her Irish Catholic. I have let the name that I have given her tell you a whole lot about what that cultural significance is, so that I don't have to spend a whole bunch of time in my story laying out things that a reader could pick up from cues like that, right? So I want to know, what is it that she wants? She's in opposition to me in this story. So what is it I really want as the protagonist? What does she really want? And so I need to be able to articulate what that is and let the story grow out of that. If I can't do that, plot is not going to work well for me. So I want to do that. And then I want to get into the contrasts. What is good? What is bad? What is difficult? What is easy? Why do these two characters like each other and become friends with each other? And what is it that causes the conflict, right? So I want to be able to identify those big things broadly. And then I want to know who, just in the real world, what does this person do with her time? How does she engage with the world? You know, for example, a really good thing is she's a dog lover, rescues animals, loves them to death, is steadfast and true to them, right? Well, I like that. I'm a dog person. I have dogs. I have 2 rescue animals. I love that, right? So there's a way in which these two characters come together and have something to share that's meaningful. And then there's this other contentious part in which she so needs to be in control of a situation that she won't allow anybody else to have a voice. And when a person asserts a voice, then difficulties arise. And so the thing to begin to explore is, why does that happen? What is it that is propelling that forward, right? So that's what I'm trying to get to in my very first draft of the analysis. And so again, 12, 15 of these emerge over time as I get more and more into the world of these characters and decide to tell it. I'll have to decide if I'm going to keep it fiction or if I'm really just going to tell a straight story, but that's for another day. All right. So the first thing I want you to do is to make that character. And the reading, I think, in chapter 2 will help you do it, you do it. So on page 26 of the book, the writer says, good writers create a sense that their characters are people, physical, emotional, living, breathing, thinking people, right? So you want a character, as the writer says, real enough to cast shadows. And that's your big assignment for this week, is to begin drawing that character. And your short writing assignment will be geared to help you do that. Next in helping you do that is the story that we're going to listen to this week on the New Yorker Fiction Podcast. And I chose Found Objects by Jennifer Egan. It was Susan Choi reads it, and does a really good job reading it. And I think this story fits really well into our discussion. And we could talk about it in terms of its plot, especially in terms of its symbolism. She is telling you so much about this character based on found objects and how the found objects are used and kept, right? So there are so many things about Sasha's character in this story that Egan crafts that she doesn't need to tell us. But we're doing some mental work behind the scenes as we think about it, right? So I'm going to have you listen to the story. I put the text of the story up on our class site, so you have both the audio and the actual printed text if you choose to use it of that particular story. I think it's an awesome example of a complex character that casts shadows. Sasha, well, first of all, Jennifer Egan used found objects as chapter 1 in her award-winning book, A Visit from the Goon Squad. And if you haven't read that book, I highly recommend it. It's very unusual. Not as unusual now as it was a few years ago when it came out, because other writers have emulated her. But it's grand, right? So chapter 1 of that book is this story. Largely, I think there are a few changes to it, but mostly she has used this story as the launch pad for a novel that won big prizes, right? So clearly, you have a character who is stealing and is in therapy. So is that good? No, right? I mean, it's not admirable. But the character knows it's not admirable, and she's in therapy, right? So what's the desire? Why is it that she's stealing? Why is it that she talks about making change. The story ends with, I'm changing, I have changed. But has she? Is she going to be capable of that change? And those are big questions about her character that Egan leaves for the reader to assess and judge, right? So our discussion board this week is going to look at the complexities of Sasha's character and how that engages with the reading in the book, right? So explore that and let your mind and the creative nature of the story kind of feed your response to the discussion. And then take that information and use it to craft a writing assignment for this week. I won't always do a video lecture, mainly because I'm terrible at video. There's something about talking into a screen and seeing myself doing it that is really awkward and uncomfortable, so I'm not good at it. But I do want to get us started with some clues as to what I think is important in the reading and how we can get started in telling a story, the story that we want to tell. All right. And as always, if you have any questions at all, any struggles at all with the course page or anything else, be sure and let me know, and I'll help you work through until we get to a good solution for all of us. In the meantime, have a great time making a character. It is one of the most fun things about creative writing, is getting able to make your paper doll and add clothes to it and set it in, a three-dimensional map. So enjoy that. And I will see you back here next week.